Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to The Black Tower Show. I am your host, Nathan Ford. I'm joined by Jake Fox. We're broadcasting in BC Studios, upstate New York. The Black Tower Show, underground radio for the inquisitive mind. And we got Julia Davis. Julia Davis is a national security whistleblower. You need to know her story. You need to listen. Sit back. Take the time to listen to her story. Anti-terrorism immigration expert. She served as a Customs and Border Protection Officer at the San Ysidro Port of Entry, the largest and busiest land border crossing in the U.S. and in the world. Okay, let's go back. It's the 4th of July. Let's run down this story. The 4th of July, 2004. Tell us what your job was and what you saw on that day. Julia Davis, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to tell the story. Yes, we had very specific intelligence alerts that members of Al-Qaeda were planning to penetrate the U.S.-Mexico borders through our land border crossings, such as the San Ysidro port where I worked. So 4th of July was designated as a date to watch of special importance. And on that date, I came into work. I was working as a supervisor in a port enforcement team that dealt mainly with issues of applicants for admission from countries other than Mexico. And also one of my duties was to go through the paperwork from the previous shift and put it into the Homeland Security database, and pretty much inputting what kind of people came in, what countries they were from, just those types of basics. And when I was doing that, I noticed that we had 23 people from terrorist countries that have been admitted into the U.S. from the previous shift.
From the previous shift, you noticed 23 aliens from terrorist countries that were being allowed into the U.S. And so you go to the FBI and you report it. And what was that reaction?
Well, Homeland Security people wanted me to keep it internal. No federal agency ever likes to be embarrassed, and they always want to allow themselves to investigate themselves and, of course, find themselves to have been above reproach. So when I made a report to the FBI, which is what we were required to do if anything related to terrorism was taking place, my life was never the same from that point on. I became a subject of numerous investigations, a total of 54 investigations. And my home was raided with a Black Hawk helicopter and a special response team. The irony of it is that they had used more manpower and had spent more time searching my house than the manpower that was used to raid bin Laden's compound. They had more agents for me, and they spent more time at my house. So that gives you kind of a sad idea about what their, what the top priorities of the agency are, and that is to contain any embarrassing information instead of protecting national security.
So letting aliens into the country, is this something that at the Homeland Security, where this is something that may happen regularly, where someone might be told, a border crossing agent might be told to let an alien into the country illegally? Is there that, like, a culture of corruption there?
Yeah, there absolutely is a culture of corruption, and Customs is historically the most corrupt federal agency. And people from all levels of the management have been caught accepting bribes for allowing aliens and drugs to come across the border, even including the former port director at San Ysidro. Her name was Daphne Kaganak, and she was convicted for doing exactly that. So, yes, there's definitely a major precedent for these types of things happening, except I'm not aware of any other cases where they involve people from terrorist countries. But that doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
It's the 4th of July. You find out that these 23 aliens are being let into the country. You bring it to your superiors, but they're at a picnic. It's the 4th of July. We've talked to Gwyneth Todd, who is another, she worked as a contractor. She has proof that the government was trying to kill her. And it was the 4th of July for her, too. Interesting that that is the time when people are home, away, that this sort of thing is happening. It seems that is a good time, obviously, right?
Yes, obviously, and not only Homeland Security thinks so, but apparently Al-Qaeda thought so as well. And they said paperwork retrieved from bin Laden's compound also mentioned 4th of July as a good date to do something. And even the Boston bombers guys supposedly referred to 4th of July. So, yes, they, for a variety of reasons, I guess that's considered a good target date.
Yeah. So they go after you, okay? You're labeled a domestic terrorist now, and they go after you hard. You're a top priority. Julia Davis, a person who is doing her job, essentially. You see that these 23 aliens are being let into the U.S. You bring it to the FBI. And then, instead of doing something about it, they go after you. They call you a domestic terrorist. 54 retaliatory investigations against you. Talk about those investigations, how they affected your life.
Well, it was a living hell, and actually, once I was a subject of 16 investigations that had been started only after my disclosure, I left the agency. There was literally no way for me to keep working there. All that would happen is I'd come into work and they would serve me with another notice to go get interrogated downtown by ICE, who would keep me there for 8 hours or more, and who made it very clear that I was there because I couldn't shut up about the agency, because I criticized their procedures, because I made reports outside the agency, and they had told me, D.C. is waiting for this, you're toast, you're going to be gone, you're going to be done, we're going to judge you, and I even told them to remember everything they're saying, that at some point in time I will get those audio tapes of those interrogations. And they laughed at me, ICE agents, Coffer and Deal, who were spearheading all of these investigations. They were literally the ones that initiated all 54 investigations based upon former Commissioner of Customs Robert Bonner's directive. So it was just like living the movie Enemy of the State. Not only was I under investigations, but my husband and I found ourselves being constantly followed, where we would be taking pictures of the people that were taking pictures of us. It was absolutely ridiculous. And Homeland Security later complained that targets are surveillance savvy and have been photographing them as they're chasing us from state to state, from town to town. They had as many as 8 agents a day following us. Not only that, but they also admitted in videotaped depositions that they had actually sent a plane to conduct surveillance against me, fixed-wing airplane from Coronado base that was flown out just to photograph my house, myself, my husband, our cars. Can you imagine? It's in the millions, and taxpayers have funded it. And Homeland Security arrogantly said that in their mind that was a good way to spend taxpayers' resources.
That's a good way to spend. Go after Julia Davis.
Yes, and also I think people also need to know what kind of criteria they used in calling me a domestic terrorist, because this could apply to you and to God knows how many people it's being quietly applied to. What they said is they declared me a domestic terrorist for the aggravation in my claims against the government, in my lawsuit, and in my press announcements. So think about how many people would qualify for that, simply for aggravating the government by exposing their corruption. And they keep that obviously quiet, so the person that's being named a domestic terrorist doesn't know it. But at the same time, the government believes that that relieves them of any responsibility to honor your constitutional rights. They believe that under the Patriot Act, that allows them to do wireless surveillance, wiretaps, following, searches and seizures, sneak and peeks, you name it. Pretty much at that point, you're considered to be a fair game.
So you didn't want to be a whistleblower?
No, I never saw myself as a whistleblower.
You were a reporter.
No, I never saw myself as a whistleblower.
You were a reporter. 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 You were a repor Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I thought I was just doing my job and doing the right thing. Never saw myself as someone that was blowing the whistle.
But they saw you. I mean, you don't think that they really think that you're a threat, right? They're just trying to shut you up, right?
Oh, absolutely. Before hiring me, Homeland Security had investigated me very thoroughly, and I'd also applied at the same time to several other agencies, such as CIA and the FBI. So not only did they investigate me here in the U.S., but since I was born in the Ukraine, they had Interpol go there, and they had interviewed people that went with me to my university, to my school, and even to my kindergarten. There was literally nothing they didn't know about me.
But why
so
would they
knew
do
very
that
well.
if they didn't think that you were a threat? If they knew that you weren't a threat?
For the same reason that they do what they do to every whistleblower across the nation. I'd actually created whistleblowerdirectory.com, where I'm listing names and case narratives for countless whistleblowers from all walks of life. And when you read through those cases, you see a pattern. That tactic for dealing with whistleblowers was actually created during the Nixon administration in the Melick manual that was found in Nixon files. And they had outlined the strategy for when someone blows the whistle or says something that embarrasses the agency, they are to be internally investigated for anything that on the surface doesn't seem to have any relevance to what they had blown the whistle on. And therefore, they try to discredit that person. And once the person is discredited, then in their mind, that means that no one would listen to anything they have to say if it's someone that the government fires, say for maybe fudging their time card reports or stating the wrong amount on their gas receipt from the government credit card, something like that. Then they would say, well, that person is a bad apple. And they also love to use the expression disgruntled former employee. So that's just their strategy. It's been done to countless whistleblowers.
Yeah, right. But to brand you a domestic terrorist, that is over the top. I mean, come on.
I would say so. I would say so. And, not only were they trying to, when they brought the helicopter, they brought a 29 count sealed indictment for my husband and I, and they had us thrown in prison twice. We had to fight those criminal cases, which took years, and we were able to prevail. All charges against us were dropped, and we were declared factually innocent. In fact, the government was even ordered to return everything they took during warrantless searches, and as I'm sure you could probably guess, other than returning my shotgun, they have not returned a thing, so they're in contempt of a court order. But their objective was not only to have my husband and I rot in prison for 10 years or more, but also they were asking the court to strip me of my American citizenship, denaturalize me, and deport me, which is a very extreme request that's normally done to people like Nazi war criminals. So they were definitely going all the way with this, and I think that's indicative of the magnitude of whatever it was that I stumbled into.
Yeah.
The 23 people that
right.
for some reason.
They obviously, part of the fear there is that, well, you know the names of these aliens that were being let into the U.S., so their initial reaction is going to be to remove you from your position, your job, and separate you from all the connections that you've made at your job, political connections, those things, and isolate you. It's in the best interest to send Julia Davis away to another country, to be separated. And so that was the action there, to get rid of you, to put your voice into the wilderness, if you will. Julia Davis is
exactly.
out there.
Exactly. And, if anything was to happen where these people were involved in some kind of a terrorist act, they wanted to make sure I was not around to tell anyone that this is how it happened, this is how they got in. And my report about it was actually closed the same day with no investigation and no action. So they have thrown all their powers on investigating and discrediting me instead.
Well, this was around the same time as Russ Tice was coming out with his revelations about the NSA and things, and he's recently come forward saying that they had spying orders on then State Senator Obama and John McCain and a Supreme Court justice and Colin Powell and on and on. So I mean, I'm assuming based on this information, they were and on your experience that they were spying on you to the most illegal degree possible. They knew exactly what you were up to. They knew you weren't really doing anything illegal or harmful or anything. I mean, this sounds like they were just completely trying to intimidate you into stop talking. They weren't trying to. I mean, if they found something illegal, great. But I mean, these searches and intimidation tactics, they weren't genuine.
Yes, and let me tell you something about one of their surveillance tactics that was used in my case that I don't think is getting much exposure in the media yet, and it should. They had used OnStar in my case, and they used what is called passive listening technique, where they remotely turn on the mic inside your car. They're listening to whatever's being said inside your vehicle, in addition to tracking your whereabouts. And they actually, when I started looking into it, OnStar is completely indemnified from ever being sued for allowing them such access. All it takes is they pay OnStar $150 an hour, and OnStar does whatever they're told, even though I didn't even have active OnStar service in my car. I specifically had it canceled a year earlier. And OnStar is also encouraged by the government to lie to their customers if they're asked whether they're being tracked or whether there's anyone spying on them. OnStar is told by the government to lie. And it's actually something that I saw in the documents that came out in Discovery, where it specifically said OnStar shall not disclose the existence of this surveillance under any circumstances.
Oh, man, they're watching. They're watching and they're listening. And Julia Davis, our guest on the Black Tower Show, national security whistleblower. Last part of our story. Talk about this culmination. Department of Homeland Security conducted a commando-style raid of your home with Black Hawk helicopters. Run through that situation, how it affected your family, your close relationships with your friends, and your job, and how that all panned out.
Yes, when they started to serve me with countless notices of investigation, I had no other choice but to involuntarily resign, and I sued Homeland Security for subjecting me to such mistreatment, and I won against them. The judge actually said they had engaged in illegal conduct against me, ordered them to compensate me for what they had done, but instead of honoring that court order, they landed a Black Hawk helicopter at my home a couple of weeks after I won against them in court, and stormed it with 27 men from a special response team armed with assault weapons, which is more people than they had used for bin Laden's compound. Instead of staying in a hotel near to our house, they decided to drive 40 minutes further to stay at a luxury resort where rooms run $700 to $900 a night. So they went there in style, these 27 agents having fun at the luxury resort, and that's why they missed us leaving right before the raid. So they arrived back for surveillance before the raid, and they saw my mom walk outside the house to water the plants, and they assumed that it was me. And so agents Coffer and Deal, which are Homeland Security ICE agents that have been personally directed by Commissioner Bonner to spearhead this campaign to get rid of me and discredit me, they had given the command to start the raid. So the Black Hawk starts descending next to our house, and my parents described it as the house was shaking like it was a 7 point on Richter scale, earthquake, sand blowing into the winds, and it's obviously very loud. And at first they thought that some helicopter had mechanical failure and had to make emergency landing. So my dad runs out of the house to go towards the side of where the helicopter was landing, and he sees that these agents in black are already at our bedroom door on another side of the house, ramming it with a battering ram. And he yells to them, "What are you doing? The front door is on the other side," which obviously they better know that after having house under surveillance for over a year. But so instead of answering to him, he was tackled by this group of armed agents and thrown to the ground and cuffed and shackled. This whole time he keeps asking them, "What's going on? What are you doing here?" And they're just laughing and scoffing at him. And the only answer that they would give him is, "Your daughter, Julia Davis, is a domestic terrorist." And in the meantime, other agents are already inside the house, had thrown my mom down on the floor, cuffed and shackled her as well. And of course, as I'm sure you realize, they had no legal right whatsoever to lay one finger on either one of my parents. They're completely innocent. And they dragged my dad away from the house out in the about 117-degree desert sun. He's only wearing boxer shorts, and he's a heart patient, which they knew because they'd already pulled my parents' immigration files, and they knew that my dad had a heart condition. So I'm pretty sure that it was meant to be done exactly that way. And when my dad kept telling them he's having a heart attack and asking to take his nitroglycerin, they just kept laughing at him and left him there for about an hour and 45 minutes sitting in full desert sun, cuffed and shackled and having a heart attack. And they had an ambulance stationed right across the street that was there specifically for the raid. So when my dad is telling them, "I need medical assistance," they go ahead and radio the ambulance telling them, "You're no longer needed, you may leave." And my dad ended up dying not much longer after the raid because the doctors explained to me that when someone is having an untreated heart attack, their heart tissue dies, and over half of his heart tissue died from oxygen deprivation that could have been corrected if he was taken in by the ambulance and given oxygen and given his medication. So to me, it seems like it was very much a pre-planned thing that they wanted to do. In the meantime, the team had been ransacking the house, and mind you, they had no search warrant. But for an hour, 45 minutes, they're turning the house upside down, digging through our paperwork, pulling out all kinds of papers and hard drives, laptops, filling out banker's boxes with whatever items looked good to them, and walking them out to the helicopter and also to the 8 cars that they had surrounding the house to make sure that no one could escape. So, and they actually, at first, these agents came up to my mom and laughing asked, "Julia, how are you doing?" And she looked up at them and she said, "I'm not Julia, I'm her mother." And their jaws dropped. So at that point they knew that there was no one to arrest in the house, but still they continued searching and seizing items. And as it turns out, our neighbor saw the Black Hawk starting to descend and started filming the raid. So he got the raid on the videotape. And he also realized that Homeland Security agents noticed him filming them. And on tape you could hear him say, "Oh no, they saw me." And he backed into the house and kept on filming through his window. And his name was Matthew Judd. He was 25 years old. And he was very, very scared to tell anyone that he had this tape. But he contacted me through third parties and arranged for me to have the footage, and also came into my attorney's office and wrote a statement about what he saw and when he videotaped. A few weeks went by and he was found dead, sitting on his couch in the living room, no apparent cause of death. At the age of 25, you would think that that would be heavily investigated, but it wasn't. The death certificate just said that the cause of death was pending investigation.